There we go. Had a little trouble going live this morning. Good morning. We are going to have, I'm going to have some Earl Grey lavender tea from a local tea shop in Salt Lake City. I no longer live there, but they were, a local business that I really liked. And the guy was really passionate about tea, and I loved that, especially I found him right when I started drinking tea. First, I'm going to tell you how I came upon drinking tea and why it's just a mild obsession for me. And then I'm going to tell you about niching down and how to find your niche and how I don't even think we should have them. And anyway, so let me tell you the story about tea. So I was raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I grew up as a Mormon. My last name actually was Mormon. And so I was very compliant with all the things that they asked us to do. One of them was obeying the word of wisdom. And the word of wisdom basically is you it's a sort of a code of health that is really supposed to keep people healthy, and it's great. One of the things is you're not supposed to drink alcohol. You're not supposed to drink coffee, but you're also not supposed to drink tea. And I remember when I first, let's see, I had stopped going to church. I decided it was not right for me at the time in my life, and in about 2015 in November. And then it wasn't until we were on vacation in England and we were there for 10, let's see, like 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. I think it was just 10 days. And this was in June. So it was about 8 months later after I had stopped going to church. And I I first had a sip of like, I don't know, I think it was cider. So I had a sip of cider and I was like, "Ooh, I'm I'm bad now." And then finally at the end of the week. Now the thing is in England, they ask you if you want tea, like at almost every meal. Like it is a given. It is expected. And so I'd always order things like chamomile or some kind of herbal tea. And the herbal teas are, they're just not as good. Or at least I thought they weren't as good because I just thought tea must be this most amazing thing. Because, clearly it's I felt like a kid looking in the candy store, and people are nuts about coffee and some people are nuts about tea. So I just thought I have, this was a big deal. So but I don't know why I put it off for so long. So finally on the last day there, we were at dinner at a nice restaurant, and I was like, I am tired of asking for herbal tea. So I I asked for tea and they said, "What kind do you want?" And I was like, "Ooh, English English breakfast." I just like picked the most, basic one I could think of. And he brought it out and I tried it and I was like, "That's it? This is it did not taste like sin to me." So, anyway, the rest is history. Ever since then, it was like finally the doors of the candy store were open. Yeah, like I would it was like I was always peering in, what are they doing that's fun over there? I always felt like I was being left out. So now it's fun. I collect lots of tea things and I enjoy it, and it's not completely my style. Like if I had the if I had the resources that I wanted, I'd probably my house would look pretty traditional but modern, but not like sort of traditional modern is probably my where I sit. And I don't love a lot of frilly things, and yet when it's tea time, I'm like, okay. I still have, I suppose, boundaries for my taste. I don't go crazy. I would say that for teacups that I collect, which we can talk about that on another episode, but I would probably say that I stay close to the, floral. Like, I keep it with floral, and I try not to go too cozy, too sweet. I mean, it's pretty cozy. Anyway, so that's kind of my style. And all right, but let's get right to niching down, or the niche, the niche, nichety niche, nichey, whatever you want to call it. Niches, niches, gooses, geeses. Let's This is a big topic. All right. Niching down is a big topic, and people talk about it all over YouTube, especially any kind of business advice usually explains that you need to pick one lane, basically. So a niche is that one little nugget of the market that you're going to focus on and do it really, really well. And then, eventually people will find you. Google is especially helpful for finding you if you have a niche, and then your business takes off, and you know, it's a wonderful experience. Well, for me, I first heard the word like niche or niche when I was about 13, and somebody had wisely, like somebody with a lot of wisdom had told me that, don't worry, I will find my niche one day. And so then the next for the next 35 years, I did not take the advice of not worrying about it, but I obsessed about it for 35 years. What's your niche? What is it? What is it you want to do with the rest of your life? You got to pick one lane. What is it? What can I do well? What can I do well and then not get bored doing? I would say that niching down is probably one of the scariest things for somebody with multiple curiosities or multiple passions, multiple interests, because you could get, like I said, you could get bored. You could get distracted easily. As I just said, I was being distracted right there. You can It can be difficult to fully commit to one passion because you have lots of other things that you like. So, it's particularly challenging for someone like us. One person that I found, so for I was concerned about this for quite a long time. But then I found this guy on YouTube named Dan Koe, Koe, and he explains that you are the niche, like you are. And so for me, what I'm doing today and for this tea time, I'm establishing right now that my niche is me and also you. So it's like we're creating our own little nugget of the internet where it's you and me. And maybe you don't have the same obsessions that I do. You don't necessarily want the same hobbies as I do, but something about me and the things that I share, the way that I talk, the way that I make you feel, this is we're creating something here. We're creating a space, and then this space becomes the niche. So that's why I'm not really niching down. If you saw my notebooks, you would see so many ideas and things that I'm doing that you would see that this YouTube channel does have a little bit of focus for me. Anytime I wake up in the morning and I think, "Oh, I don't know if I should go online and talk to my audience because w- what if I don't share the thing? What if they think I'm boring? What if the things I share are boring? What if they don't even care? But what I'm learning and what I've decided to do is just keep sharing and just keep being myself. So, being yourself is what it's all about as well. And so, this is probably really bad advice to not niche down, but there's here's the thing too with niches, especially on YouTube. If somebody just does one thing, you might go to that guy for like, let's say somebody teaches you about um, how to use DaVinci Resolve, right? That's the editing software I use for YouTube. If I go to him, I have my favorites for DaVinci Resolve, and I just keep going to that person for all kinds of advice, and it's great. But if I'm just driving in my car, I'm not going to listen to that guy because he's only talking about one very narrow subject that I only use to solve a problem. I don't want to be here to solve a problem. Like, I'm not here because somebody has Googled something about, I mean, you might find me because we're talking about niches and maybe some way my tiny, you know, my tiny little mention of niches bubbles up to the surface and you find out about them. Like you click on it because I'm talking about it on this thumbnail or something. Then you might find me that way, but every day, like, you're only going to subscribe if you want to keep hanging out with me. And that's more the way I would like to do this YouTube. I want to let me say it better. I'm creating a community and an audience that I feel connected to. And I don't care about just numbers and clicks. I care about the connection that we have and the experience that we share together, which is why we have tea together in the morning. And what I love about this is that I'm allowing myself to grow and change within this space. So every couple of days, I do start to get anxious about maybe I should have a separate YouTube channel for this. Maybe I should have a separate YouTube channel for this other subject. But honestly, if I did that, I would have like 8 YouTube channels, which right now that's a little much. So I'm keeping it here. I'm just going to be myself and I'm just going to keep sharing what I think is interesting. There are lots of things I don't think are interesting. So we will keep it narrowed down. I will say this. So here's my advice for someone who is similar to me. Now, if you have one thing that you just love and you can't get enough of it and you want to just do it over and over and over again, and that's your life calling, I think that's amazing. And I wish I were more like that. But if you're not like that, then this is an idea that I'm having right here. So you create a circle. And let's see, I think that's already dying. Let's give this another shot. So you create a circle and you write yourself in the center like that. And then you just start writing all of the things that you're interested in. Now, so for me, this is me, but you of course, you write me in the center for you. All right. So here's one. I like tea. Okay. And I also like, let's see. I'm also really interested in regenerative farming. I think it's going to save the world. And I'm super excited about that. And I have no idea how to farm, and I don't know if I ever will actually do it, but I'd like to spread the word and at least as much as I can buy things from regenerative farms and talk to everybody about it. I'm not I'm not a weirdo yet about it. I don't know enough about it. Let's see. I love home design and I love baking. I also love cooking and I love books and um I love the idea of manifesting. Okay. So now here's what I have. Now, now cooking is something that, okay, so my experience has shown me. So I used to have a blog, and my old blog used to focus on being like it was a mommy blog. And so it was called like sophistamom.com, and it was about kids and teaching them manners, or it was sort of like it was a blog, so it was sort of personal essays. There were personal essays, and then I had recipes. So I would do like regular cooking, regular baking, and videos on manners, videos on books. Now, the only thing that really the things that would take off the most, the only things that ever went viral were the baking. And so that experience taught me that, you know what? Like cooking is maybe, I mean, I kept doing it. The way I had my blog set up is I still had all of those topics and it was fine. I mean, obviously, people weren't going to be as into like teaching their kids manners as they're going to be into like a cool chocolate chip cookie that you bake in a skillet, because the chocolate chip cookie you bake in a skillet would be, applicable to all. And teaching your kids manners might not even be applicable to all parents. You know, some parents might not want to raise their kids with with manners. Or you're like me and you tried your best and they still, I'm like, who raised you? Okay. So now when I'm doing this, even though I have the interest of cooking, I'm actually not going to share it here. Like, I know that if I do baking and cooking, I could probably get a lot of traffic, probably more with this than the other. Just, I have more of a talent of making baked goods look good. So I will probably stick more with baking. And also, see, I can get the baking to tie in with tea, right? And so I'm going to probably really only be baking things that I can serve with tea, which, according to Paul Hollywood, is practically everything. He always says, "Oh, I'd love this with a nice cup of tea." Great. So those are things that I can talk about. Now, because I think tea is an actually kind of broad subject. Uh it's not just the drink, it's not just the plant, the tea plant. There's also a whole culture around it. And I can sneak in things about my obsession with England or anything like that. Then, tea and books often go together. I think of tea and books as going together, so that might be something. I can imagine that there might be some crossover there. And so we're getting rid of cooking. Um, Now home design is more so as we're home design is kind of like, well, it's homey. Tea is a little bit homey, isn't it? And, baking obviously is something that you do at home. So now if you think home, then it's like, oh wait, so it's lifestyle. That's probably like the broadest topic that I have on my blog is lifestyle. And then, okay, so regenerative farming, where does that fit in? Well, I mean, it kind of doesn't. I mean, I can mention it here because it's part of me. It's part of what I enjoy. And then as far as manifesting, I'm always trying to manifest, like I'm trying to use manifestation practices in my life all over the place, especially, you know, it's a nice, like the practice of manifesting, you can look at it in a neuroscientific way. There's actually there's a woman who works at Harvard who talks about manifesting as a whole practice, and she's a neuroscientist. And I can put a link to her interview with Diary of a CEO. I'll put that in the description. So manifesting is being proven to show that it's actually like a really good kind of a mental health technique. And but I like to it's helped me as it's sort of taken a place of my it's taken like it's helped me reestablish some spirituality. So for me it's a spiritual practice. And so it's going to come out in the way I talk. I may talk more about manifesting. I don't consider myself an expert manifester. I mean, we all are. We all are manifesting things all the time. Hang on a second. Oh, this stopped going. Okay, there. We have to have our lights, our twinkle lights. Okay. So where was I? So manifesting, I may talk about some things that may emerge in this channel, but I would imagine that for the most part, it's just going to kind of seep between the cracks as we sit and have tea together, as we talk about things that interest us. I might share some books that are about manifesting and home design. This pen's getting messy. All right. So with home design, that's something that even though it interests me, I don't know if we'll talk about it a whole bunch, but it is something that has helped me to kind of see where, the broad topic, what the umbrella topic is that we're going to be talking about here. As far as finding one thing at a time to focus on, it can be helpful just to look at your circumstances too. And to really, this is where maybe it's a more spiritual practice or more mindfulness or, really connecting to something inside of you and listening to your intuition rather than other people. I think people who have multiple passions and interests and want to somehow make a career out of it, I think that they need to listen to their intuition more than anyone because typically, there are lots of people with multiple interests that, like a doctor might really like to fix old cars. There's not I mean, I think you can to become a doctor, there's a pretty straightforward route to go, and then to fix up cars, that can be pretty straightforward as well. And so for them, lots of interests make sense, and then they just kinda get on a path and do what they're doing. But sometimes when it becomes something if you're wanting if the only real path for you seems like you wanna put it all together in one place, it's important to be really connected to your own intuition. See, I'm already talking about more of a manifesting thing, like more of a manifestation topic because it's so important to really to know who you are and to find your path. Your path is going to go with somebody with multiple passions. I mean, you can listen to everybody else and just pick one niche, one lane and do one thing really, really well, get paid for that, and then whittle down your work schedule so that you have all the rest of your life. You can have this one thing over here making money, like Tim Ferriss talks about in the 4-hour work week. You could have this boring thing over here that makes money without you even noticing. And then you can have your whole life open up for you to do all the things that you want to do. So there are lots of different ways, obviously, to do multiple passions. But if you're trying to wield your multiple passions in some way into a career that makes you excited and carries you along from one thing to the next thing and feels expansive and feels exciting, and when you have this thought, like when you picture yourself living this life with this career and it looks expansive and exciting because you're not just doing one thing forever. If you're wanting something like that, then just trust and know that your path is not going to look like, here's the guy. He's a doctor. Okay? So he's gonna what can he wear on his head? All right. I think doctors used to wear a light on their head. I feel like people used to make pictures of doctors like that. So he's got a stethoscope. There he is. Okay. And drawing. That's one of my multiple passions that will probably not be in this YouTube channel. Okay. So let's say he's going to do his doctor job, which is kind of looking like this. Hopefully, he didn't get any malpractice problems in here, but maybe he had a blip. He had a midlife crisis and he wanted for a little minute to become a rock star. So he played his guitar and then he thought, nope, not for me. It's not as this life is not the life he wanted. So he gets back on track and he's the doctor. Okay. So nobody's career path is a straight line, right? So and then for cars, he maybe gets a car, fixes it up, and then sells it, and then gets another car, fixes it up, sells it. And then eventually he has enough to buy lots of cars and then this is his little not even a side hustle. It's just his side life and he loves it. And there, he's built his little beautiful little neat life. This is my concept of people who don't have lots of passions and multiple interests like I do. Okay. Now, for someone like, who can I think of that has multiple interests? So let's look at, all right, we're going to talk about, should we talk about Gwyneth Paltrow or Ryan Reynolds? Let's see. Or Oprah. Let's talk about Oprah. She's fun. Okay. So Oprah, and I'm not an expert on any of these people's lives. So We are going to call this person not Oprah, but someone very much like Oprah. Okay. And she always has cool hair, different hair. Okay. So here she is. And she started out with a career in broadcasting. And then it turned into a talk show. And then the talk show did really, really well. But while she was doing the talk show, she also, let's see, hang on. Right around here, I guess, she got a movie. Like, she became obsessed with this cool book. So she loved this book, The Color Purple. And she started, then she worked, she read it, she became obsessed with it. And then she manifested having a part in the movie of The Color Purple. So now she's also an actress. And then this turned into like speaking gigs. And it turned into, a channel, like the O channel. It turned into a magazine. So there were all right, so this is Oprah. And we'll write her name. So she was able to have a very full life, but she did lots of different things. Not that this doctor doesn't do lots of different things too, but he's kind of I don't want to call him a rigid guy. He's a single-minded guy. He knows what he wants. He just wants to help people and make decent money. And so he's on his path. And then he does other hobbies because this path pays him really well. And so he's able to do this on the side. And he has a very full life, has a nice family, very normal, cool, typical American life. Now, with Oprah, she started by doing one thing really well, but then as she had the great thing about her talk show was that it branched off to different things and she got to talk to different people about all sorts of different things. Oh, and also here's manifesting with The Secret. She went crazy about The Secret. And then there were all sorts of, not crazy, but she was very excited about The Secret and talked about that. And then so her life is very expansive and full and not boring. I can definitely say that Oprah's life is not boring. She knew she was meant for more. And so for her, I think the difference between her and him is that probably, I'm guessing he was able to listen to other people's advice, good, solid advice, and listen to it and followed it. And he went a prescriptive path. Oprah was not on a prescriptive path. Oprah was on Oprah's path. So here's this person, lots of energy, lots of passion, doesn't even always know what all of her passions are. She just knows that she's curious. She has lots of interest in other things and lots of curiosity. She cares about other people. And she also was very interested in her own feelings and curious about her own emotions. And all the things that Oprah ever did, she was curious about all the other people, but she was very curious about herself, is very curious about herself. And that's one of the things that makes her so exciting and why she's had such a fascinating career. And as she's done things, she's gained confidence and, she's a very interesting person to watch. But all along, she has needed to listen to Oprah, and she's needed to listen to her own guidance system. Her guidance system is what has led her to all of these things. And, she discovered manifesting as a kind of tool. She said that she realized it was real when she did somehow like I was listening to her story. She was on Larry King Live and she was telling him about how she got the role for The Color Purple. And I mean, it's really amazing. And so she said that she knew that she could do that. So she started to understand her power and, and then created this life. So, what does that mean for us? I think if you want to if you're not this guy with these kinds of interests, like 2 or 3, if you're not that person and you're this person and you're like a little worried because you're like, but wait, I like all these things. What do I do? So I can share what I did. When I was kind of in this spot, when I was in my first marriage, we didn't have a lot of money. And became obsessed with a lot of the things that Martha Stewart had in her magazine. And I wanted to do all the things. But all the things in Martha Stewart's magazine can get pretty expensive. And so I was doing like bookbinding and I was wanting to decorate things and make things look cool and maybe buy some antiques. And I wanted to do a lot of different things. But it was, it's getting expensive. And I wanted to marbleize paper, all these lots of fun things. And then but one time my husband sat down with me, a husband at the time, and he said, I think all these things are great. He's like, you're doing a great job, but they are getting kind of expensive to do all the things. He's like, what if you were to pick one? And I said, I know, but I'm having a hard time picking one, but it might, at the time it felt like it might be a relief to only have one and to only focus on one. Because here's the other thing that I failed to mention. Sometimes when we're here and the reason we're so perplexed is because some of these things, these little ideas, here's a concept. So these little ideas are coming to us and if you think of them as their own kind of consciousness, they all want your attention. They're like, do me, do me. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm a fence that I want you to build. And I'm this other idea. I want you to, I'm a movie idea. Here, write me. So they will ideas will find really creative people and be like, ooh, like I have an idea. I want you to, create me. So in Big Magic, Liz Gilbert talks a lot about this, how ideas are almost like their own consciousness, their own little identity. And they want you because you're willing, right? It's kind of like the people who see ghosts. Ghosts go to find the people like in the movies, or I don't know. I don't see ghosts. But I've heard that if people do see ghosts, then suddenly ghosts will come and find them, which is really interesting and sounds scary, but maybe it's not. I don't know. Anyway, I really digress here. So anyway, these guys all want your attention. And then that can feel like anxiety when everybody wants your attention, especially if you're thinking that some of these or most of them or something in order to justify all of them because you feel like a weirdo because you're trying all these different things and you're not and maybe you're married to someone like this, or maybe the rest of your family is more like this guy. And so you start to feel anxious. And so then you start to think that everything that you want to do has to be justified by money. So then you start having all these money thoughts. And nothing's wrong with money. I love money. But when you think that every one of these things that are vying for your attention have to somehow prove themselves in a financial way, then that can get really, uh, really difficult. So when my husband, even though he was trying to help me curtail, but he sort of threw me a lifeline because what he said was, look, I know you have lots of things that you want to do, but you are really good at cooking. And what if you just took the next little bit and just focused on cooking? Nothing else. You just focus on cooking. He's like, you like it, and we have to eat anyway, and we already have to buy food. So it's the, you know, from my standpoint, it's the most practical thing we could do. By the way, he was one of these guys right here. And so that actually, like I said, that felt like a relief. And it felt like, oh, okay, I can just focus on this. And I felt like I had his full support, which was really nice. And then I just focused on cooking. And then from there, that one idea did branch off into other things. And then I thought, oh, I heard about blogs. Then I decided to do a cooking blog. But I had established like several years of focusing on cooking and getting good at it. So that then when I had the cooking blog, I was then incorporating photography, writing, connecting with people online. And then suddenly, so even though I did start with this one thing, that one thing led to a few other things. And then it grew. And then with my blog, I was able to add more things from there, right? And then the cookbook. And then and then of course I had other things going along on the side. That worked pretty well because I did choose to focus on one thing. Now, that idea sometimes is a little bit scary when you have many passions. You think, what am I going to do? How can I can't just focus on the one thing. The reason why it was the reason why I was able to get clear and just choose cooking for a while was because even though it came from a suggestion of somebody who I cared about, it was it still resonated with me. I didn't feel like my husband was like, "Get cooking, woman. Stop wasting my money." It wasn't like that at all. It really was heartfelt and it made sense and it felt like a really good idea. And it felt like, it felt like I was calming the voices down and sort of saying to all those little ideas, like, okay, maybe I'll have time for you later, but I'm going to focus on this because, oh, by the way, I also have a bunch of kids running around. So that was that worked then. So now with this time, what do you do if you're like, I don't know what the thing is? I don't know what this thing is to pull out here to go on my way. Now, depending on your resources, I think sometimes when you have more resources, it can get more overwhelming. I was listening to someone who I was listening to someone last night. His name, well, he's like a channeler, and his name is Bashar. And he said this. He said, when you learn to do more with less, then you will need less. Let's see. Then you will need to do less to get more. Okay. I'll say that again. When you learn how to do more with less, then you will need to do less to create, receive, or get more, which is what everybody wants, right? Like, wouldn't it be nice to have that one thing that you can do on the side and then you can just live your expansive life? and you don't have to worry about the money coming in from all those things. Or maybe you're really good at money and so they all make you money. That's fun too. So that's why I think for me, this worked. The cooking thing worked for me. I'll draw a whisk. Ooh, ooh, ooh. There's my little whisk for cooking. Okay. That's why that worked. And then, so you're like, but Jamie, I have lots of resources. That's okay. So back to the resources. That worked for me because we didn't have a lot of resources at the time. And I was, like he said, we had to eat, and I could get good at supplying the food for my family and cooking, and that created more and expanded from there. So if you've got something like, all right, so there's also this idea of like the box, the creative box. So people talk about that, filmmakers talk about this a lot. So like a filmmaker will oftentimes create a more wonderful magical movie with a lower budget than a huge budget. Case in point, are you thinking of the movies I'm thinking of? Peter Jackson and The Lord of the Rings. So The Lord of the Rings, the first 3 movies, they had a very tight budget, so tight. And Peter Jackson had made a couple movies, and the stars in the movie had made a few movies. I think a couple of the Hobbits, so like Elijah Wood and what's his name? I keep thinking of his mom's name, Patty Duke. Okay, you know who I'm talking about. Sean Astin. So, I mean, people had heard of them, but like most of the people were kind of just, they were sort of well known. They were good actors, but not as popular as many. So they had a very, like a constrained, they had constraints, but then they were able to work within those constraints and they were able to make a beautiful movie. And then with The Hobbit, they had more money. And they had to use a lot of green screens. And I can't remember why, but using the green screens, like there was a big criticism of using the green screens. There was actually a good reason why they had to. And I can't recall it right now. But anyway, we're not here to pick on The Hobbit, okay? But The Hobbit had a bigger budget. And then that meant that, number one, there's a lot more pressure from the studio to create something amazing. And number two, like they had so much money that then they were able to kind of like keep grabbing more in order to make the thing. But if they had the tight constraints, it might have actually kind of created some structure for what they made. I don't know if this makes sense. If you can think of anything like this, put it in the comments. I would like to see it. So when you have lots of interests, if you can pick one thing that kind of carries you along for a little bit and let that expand, I think that's the sweet spot. So for me, I do have lots of things that I want to do. Creating this right here, this YouTube channel, is a way for me to keep things focused. But even then, YouTube itself is very expansive, and I have to keep reminding myself to stay a little bit more focused. But trusting that as I do this, eventually it will lead to other things. so that I can do more and more and more and incorporate all my interests. And but I'm asking myself, is that what I want to leave you with if you have multiple interests? I think so. Now, okay, let's go back to Oprah. The thing that she started with was expansive, like, let's just say, her life took her to just different, I think she just did regular broadcasting journalism, but then she did the talk show. The talk show was a really good umbrella for her. All right. And when you have a really good umbrella, that allows you to expand. So for me, cooking, which I was focusing on at the encouragement of my husband, it was still an umbrella of sorts, okay? It's still, there was side dishes and meat dishes and desserts and all sorts of things. So it still had its own expansiveness. Right there. Right? So if you're this person and you have too much, throw yourself a lifeline and pick something, get really quiet. This has to be between you and yourself, you and God, maybe you and a trusted friend, and you get very quiet and in a peaceful place. Maybe do some meditation. You could even like, I know this sounds weird, but talk. Like, this is what I do a lot of the time. I will get in a quiet room by myself and I will imagine, it's like using your imagination. So I will imagine that I'm inviting all of those ideas to come and sit in the room with me. This is kind of the concept of the mastermind. Now, a mastermind is a group of people, of like-minded people who come together for a specific purpose. Napoleon Hill talked about it in his book, Think and Grow Rich, but the first time it appeared was in the second edition, or not the first edition, of Laws of Success. It came later, and there was a whole chapter on the mastermind. And then, so the mastermind is this idea where you're getting together with these people, these like-minded people. Little known fact is that when he was talking about the mastermind, many times those people talking in their mastermind when they would talk about the mastermind, many times people invited to those masterminds were already dead. Meaning, I don't think they had like a seance and were trying to summon Thomas Edison or something like that. I think it's more this idea of you're sort of connecting to the consciousness, and you're really just using your imagination, and you're kind of creating this little imaginary world where you're pretending to be with these people. You're basically doing make believe. And this works. It sounds really weird, but it totally works. And I do it all the time. And it's not like I'm talking to anybody necessarily, but I might be, for example, I will sort of sit and I will invite my higher mind to visit and to be here. Meaning my higher mind's there all the time, but I'm not always listening. So it's a way for me to sit down and say, hello, I'm listening and I'm willing to hear what you have to say. So then that higher mind, it's like what certain people call permission slips. Like, they're like little tools that you use to connect and be the best version of yourself, right? And, this might work for you or not, but so you sit and you connect and you say, "Hi, higher mind, I'm here. And I'd also like to invite," you could do it with ideas, you could do it with people. This is not witchy stuff, seance. There's no, there's like, I mean, you could do it. You do you, however you want to do it and however resonates and works for you. What I do is it used to help to have like their names on cards or the idea names. Like sometimes I'll write down every idea or every project that wants my attention and I'll write it on a card. In fact, hold on. So I've actually done this a few times. So so oh gosh, it's dusty and my yeah, okay. This is dusty. All right. So I've had an idea to do some t-shirts. Ooh. And let's see. 11s is with Jamie. That's kind of what we're doing here. My YouTube channel. These are all ideas that have wanted my attention. I want to build a house with a balcony library. I want to, t-shirts. I already mentioned that one. Oh, there's a book I'm wanting to write. Yeah. Anyway, I just have all these ideas. 11s is society. That's something I've been working on. Yeah. Just lots of, you see all of them, right? Okay. So those are all my ideas and they're all wanting my attention. So what I do is, I can stick these. Sometimes I will play around with these cards and pull whichever ones, but sometimes I'll just say, okay, you're all here. I see that you all want my attention. And then I say, look, I can't do all of these things. I can't take care of all of you. I can't do all of you justice right now. I hope I can get to you at some point in my life. I hope I can get to you soon. But the sooner I can be clear, the sooner I can get to you. Because if I'm not clear, if you're all trying to grab my attention, I'm just going to be like this and I'm not going to get anything done. So, I'll get quiet and I'll find out which one feels most exciting and resonates the most. And then I also will have a little talk with them and say, "Hey guys, listen. I like you and I appreciate you. Even if I do one of you for a little while and then like you need to help me out so that I'm not confused because then you'll all get your turn." It's a little bit the funny thing is it sounds very similar to the IFS or internal family systems kind of therapy, which is something where you're actually working with a therapist and or meditating on your own and you kind of connect to the different parts of yourself. So, and you're just giving them all like you're letting them know that they all matter, but that they need to work with you because you can't do everything all at once. So, there's 2 ways you can there are, I'm sure, infinite ways. There are 2 ways that have worked for me to help me kind of hone in. One one is where I just have them calm down and I say, "Okay, which one do I work on right now?" And then I just worry about or not worry, but I just focus on the one thing that it kind of feels the most exciting, like happy, colorful, whatever like lights up. It's not like I see colors in my mind, but it feels colorful. It feels bright. Whatever excuse me, whatever one is like that, that's the one I will focus on. And I will say, "Hey, okay, I can't wait to get to work with you soon." And we will do that eventually. But right now, I need some momentum in this one area before I can even get to you because I'll have more energy and more wherewithal to get to you soon. So then there's that way. Sometimes now, like with me in the cooking, I had a parameter, like an almost a time parameter. Like, it was like for right now, meaning for the next couple of years. And I was okay with that because I did have little kids. There was sort of there was a little bit I had constraints, right? Because I had kids and there was time constraints of having kids. I was more in here. So that felt good to just be doing the cooking. Now, I'm a little bit more like here. My kids are grown. I have a little bit more money. I have a little bit more time, a lot more time. So trying to pull it all together is a little bit different. But I still think both can work because there are movies like, for example, we're not Peter Jackson's great. We're not picking on him for The Hobbit, okay? But so James Cameron, here, we'll be like this. James Cameron was like this for Terminator. It was actually really low budget, but it was a really good movie. And Terminator 2, I think also was not a very high budget movie. Well, let's just stick to Terminator because that's the only one I'm really sure on. And then Titanic was a huge movie and it did really well. Say what you will about Titanic, but it was a very successful movie. So was Avatar. More money, more room to wiggle, and yet he still pulled it all together. So I'm not saying that the only way to really create is to have the time constraints, um but constraints can be helpful. So now with me, I don't have the constraint like this anymore and have to stick to cooking. So I have quite a bit more room. So what I do is like, so let's say for me, I'm not just focusing on one. Gosh, I have so many ideas. All right. So I'm focusing on this one right now. Now, the great thing is about this one, it is a bit of an umbrella. It's in the name. It incorporates lots of things. So as I focus on this, which is, hang on, it's over here. This is my brand, my personal brand. And then I'm using YouTube as a place to put all these things. So this is the container for this. Then as I get going with this, these tea times that we're doing are part of this. And so now see, it's all coming together. And as I do this, let's see, I'm looking at some of these. Okay, well, here's an idea. T-shirts. I can make t-shirts that, I can design t-shirts that go with that brand. And I can, eventually add more and more things and let it expand. So, okay, I hope that clears things up. I don't know if I just made it more confusing, but one more thing. It's also okay, and I'm learning to do this now. This is sort of like, this is this new phase of my life, and you might not be in this phase, but I'm in this phase right now where I'm giving myself sort of the latitude to not just stick with like cooking, like I said before, but actually kind of let, especially within this kind of brand, to then almost treat it like a ship, right? Like a tall ship with all the sails. So maybe this is the big sail that's always open, but sometimes I need this sail to be unfurled. Oh, I have two things on there. Sometimes so these sails are usually open. And then sometimes I need this sail, and then the wind will catch that sail, and then the wind will catch this sail and that sail. And I can allow my attention to sway from one thing to the next. But the most important thing about that is just understanding and recognizing I'm the ship and the wind is the inspiration. Not a question. Is that true? Do I feel like that? Yeah. So the wind's the inspiration. I'm the ship and the ideas are the sails. And as I put my focus, I'm just like directing the wind is there. That's not me, but I'm just sort of directing the sails and sort of controlling which where I where the my attention is which sail is open and and then I just allow the wind to come, to blow on the sails. I think you're getting the metaphor without me trying to be more really specific. Basically, I'm just controlling where my attention goes, and I'm trusting that it's all of a piece. I am the ship, and those ideas and all that inspiration is flowing through. We are getting somewhere. And so maybe when I was younger and had fewer resources, I just needed like a sailboat with like one sail, and that was it. And that got me going. If you are a person with multiple curiosities, here's the thing. This is what it is. If you are a person with multiple curiosities, you are a tall ship. Okay. And maybe depending on what your resources, time, energy, allowances are, you might need to start with a smaller ship at first. But then trust that it is possible. You might be in this place right now that you are just in a tall ship, and as you get good at it, you allow the wind to go through your sail. Like you have different sails to work with to allow the wind to push you along to where you want to go. And think about that. That's like, isn't that really powerful? And okay, so that's what I'm going to leave you with today. I hope that that was interesting and fun. And I'll probably edit this down eventually. I will be having tea with you tomorrow. I think next week we'll probably have to change the tea time to a little bit earlier on a couple of the days. Ooh, I keep doing that up talk. I'm getting better at that. I will. I promise. Because I don't want to be hard on the ears, especially if we're going to be having these long talks like this. Okay. I hope all the best for you. And I hope that if you have multiple curiosities and multiple passions, that you're able to breathe into it, know that it's all going to work out, and connect to your intuition so that the next step. And all we need to know is the next step. We only need to deal with what we have right now, just today. Try not to worry too much about the future, and you're going to do great. Okay. I will talk to you tomorrow.